This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted as always to be joined here today by Tony Sims. We're down at the Matchroom Elite Boxing Gym here in Essex for some socially distanced fun. How are you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, mate. You?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Back to it now, although under slightly different circumstances. How's it been for you being back in the gym?
Yeah, it's great being back in the gym. I was saying to you earlier, the first month was all right in lockdown. Felt like I had a rested me muscles and my elbows and my wrists got a rest, and then the second month I started getting bored and needing to get back in the gym and felt like I needed to do something. So I'm pleased to be back now with these, with these shows at Matchroom Fight Camp.
Keep you off Amazon as well, Tony?
Yeah, got addicted to Amazon. Every day parcel coming, knocking at the door. But yeah, it's got me off of Amazon as well. Yeah.
Anything of interest?
What, on Amazon? Just rubbish, really. That's all you end up buying, and it just you end up buying everything. You look scrolling down, you think, yeah, I need that, and then when it turns up, you think, I'll put that in the shed. Don't really need it.
Now, I'm always curious when I speak to trainers because, I mean, a lot of boxing fans don't really consider the fact that, yes, fighters go into training camp, fighters come out of training camp, but a lot of times for people such as yourself and Shane McGrigan and other trainers who have multiple fighters, you're always in the gym. You're always either preparing somebody, you've just prepared somebody. It's very rare that trainers themselves get prolonged breaks. With that being said, what did you do with your break from a boxing point of view? Did you use it to, I mean, I know a lot of trainers use it to heal up and elbows and shoulders and joints and what have you. Is there anything that you did particularly with your time away boxing related?
Well, I was running most days because I run anyway because I enjoy running, and lucky enough I had an exercise bike indoors as well, so I was sort of running one day, exercise bike the next, then circuit the next day, so I kept myself ticking over like that. But what I was trying to do to motivate myself was trying to bring my times down on the running. So I got down to I was running 8-minute miles in the end. I was trying to get underneath that, but for me that's good running for me. So that's all I was trying to do really, is beat me minute miles, keep myself motivated. Also, I was obviously talking to the fighters most days. They was doing shadow boxing on FaceTime. Lucky enough, we got FaceTime these days, and I was watching them shadow box and going through some stuff with them. So I kept myself active like that and motivated as much as I could. But like everyone else, it does become boring in the end when you're just doing the same things, repetition, same thing over and over again every day.
Nothing quite beats actually getting people back in the gym and getting started again, right?
That's right, yeah. And when you're teaching people, and then you get brung away from that, you obviously still got to keep watching fighters. So I kept watching, top class fighters from way back like 60s and 70s. Kept my brain ticking over, So you learn things from watching, and and you can still instruct your fighters, as I say, over FaceTime to do them sort of things, and so that's what I was doing really in the downtime.
Now you mentioned kind of going back and watching old fighters. Those who have watched Tony Sims' appearance on our fantasy fights will know that he's a boxing historian, boxing scholar. What fighters were you watching, and more kind of importantly or more directly, what fighters in your gym do you instruct to watch? What fighters from years gone by?
All different really, depends what we're looking at really, so if I was looking at the 70s fighters for a time, and I was looking at like Jose Napoli's, the way he slips and slides shots. I watched I don't know if you've seen Monzon on Netflix. I watched a documentary on Monzon, and that brought me on to watching Monzon. Just his ruggedness, his will to win, and the way he trained, and that, and how long he went unbeaten for. He was a great fighter of the 70s, and then that brought me into watching like Carlos Palomino, them sort of fighters, who fought John Stracey, and then you go into watching Sugar Ray Leonard, who everyone's watched all over again, so you just keep going on and on. Like I watched the John Mugabe fight against Marlon Hagler, was a great fight, and then if you drop back into the 60s, I was watching like Joe Old Bones Brown, the way he was slick with his jab, the way he slipped and punched off, and fighters like Bojack, the way he rolled in and then unleashed his combinations. Ike Williams, the slickness of him. So you can keep going back and back, and then you come forward and then you go back. So, you know, just watch a big variation of fighters, and then stuff that you notice that your own fighters can blend into, because every fighter's got a different style, so you can't just exactly put that style in, the exact style from that fighter in them days into this fighter. But what you can do is, when you're watching your own fighters, you can blend a little bit in from a great fighter of yesteryear, just blend a little bit into what he's doing that accompanies his style. So that's what I was trying to do over the resting period as well.
That's obviously always sort of a bone of contention with modern boxing fans, and let's say boxing fans of yesteryear, or boxing fans who have more of an understanding and a knowledge of the history of boxing. But in your position, obviously a unique position of training modern elite fighters, how do you contrast and compare the old days, so to speak, or boxing history compared to the new era of, you know, sports science and dieting, and obviously the difference in making weight and days of the weigh-in, etc.? How much do you take from the old school? How much do you bring into the new school, and how are they different in your role as a trainer?
Well, obviously the training methods in the like the 1950s and 60s were totally different training methods from today. So what they used to do in them days, they were sparring, constantly sparring. So they'd get themselves fit through sparring and running. They was their two main attributes to build up into a fight. But because of the sparring, because so much sparring, that's where obviously the damage to the brain comes, is mostly in the sparring and the fighting. And obviously in them days, they was sparring like every day, fighting more regularly than they do today. So they was doing like 15 rounders. Maybe they was doing a 10 rounder one week. They might do a 10 rounder the following week, and then a couple of weeks later they might do a 15 rounder. So they was constantly fighting and sparring. Well, what that brought though, the downside of it was obviously the damage they were doing to themselves. The upside of it was their timing. So their timing was always spot on. They learnt to stand in the middle of the ring and slip shots, slide shots with perfect timing. And they, you know, when they let their punches go combinations, because they've done so much sparring, it was, you know, it was more rhythm in their shots. So they was a more elusive fighter, more of a combination fighter. Now, obviously, because we've got the sports science today, you know, we've got S&C, which obviously brings the athlete into today's modern standard. But obviously, we don't spar the fighters every day. I don't fight as regular as what they did, because obviously we're trying to save. We know the damage that can cause, so we're trying to save them as a human being. And by doing that, they obviously have to take longer in their training camps to start getting the timing off, because obviously they might not have sparred for a couple of months, say, beforehand. So they need to get longer in their training camps to start sparring. We make sure they're fit before they get sparring. And then we might do a 6 week, if we do a 12-week camp, we might do a 6 week camp of the spar and a 6 week camp pads, fitness and bag. So yeah, it's a different era, and obviously you got to move along with the modern times, and that's the difference between then and now. If you look at the hours and the minutes and the days and the weeks and months they spent actually in the ring, you know, if you look at some of their records, they were surpassing like 200 fights, a lot of them. So, you know, that activity of what they was doing there, obviously they felt more comfortable in there because they were constantly in there. You know, you see good fighters of today, if they surpass sort of 40 fights in their career, that's quite a lot, you know, and that's at world level on that. So, you know, it was a different era, but obviously there was a lot of damage done in them days that we know about. So that's why we can't bring that into today anyway.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of having records of 40 plus. I think Harry Greb was 42-0 in 1 year once years gone by. Yeah. So it is quite different. But thanks for that. Very interesting insight. As I say, it's a unique position you've got as a trainer of modern fighters, but also with a keen knowledge and understanding of years gone by. So that was very interesting. But now onto the modern day fight camp. As you mentioned, Eddie Hearn is Matchroom Square Garden, or Barry Sons Garden, whatever he wants to call it at the minute.
Matchroom Square Garden.
Matchroom Square Garden. We'll go with that. You've got some of your guys on there. Why don't you tell us which fighters will be appearing at fight camp?
Yeah, so on the first show, on the 1st of August, I've got top in the bill Ted Cheeseman versus Sam Egerton, which is I think is a very good fight, that fight. You know, when Eddie offered me the fight and after the Ted was really up for it, and you know, I think their styles are gonna blend together well. They both a come forward fighter, and you know, they both like to stand and trade inside. So I think it's gonna be a good fight, a good fan fight to watch, and it'll be a good kick-off to the Matchroom Square Garden camp. And yeah, Ted's been, as soon as we got the shout for that, Ted's been straight in the gym, but he'd already been ticking over. He'd already been doing his runs and his sprints and his shadow boxing, so you know, he was already in decent shape when he come back into the gym. So yeah, that's going to be a great fight. And I know Sam, he's a good fighter. Sam's a good kid, so it's going to be a tough fight for both of them. It's over 12 rounds, so it's going to be hard.
A lot of going into that fight, obviously Ted has made no secret of the fact that 2019, by his own admission, didn't go the way he would have liked to, both inside the ring and outside the ring. You mentioned the shape that he's in. I can testify to that. I saw him in the gym 20 minutes ago. Looks in fantastic condition. How important is this fight off the back of 2019 for Ted? A lot of people are billing this as essentially a must-win, a career crossroads for both fighters. Is that how you see it?
I think it probably is, yeah. I mean, they're both young fighters still, like Ted's 24 and Sam's 26, but they've both gained a lot of experience. I think Ted's year in 2019 was a real unlucky year for him, inside and outside the ring. I mean, his gambling addiction come to light. You know, he'd spent all his money, so that was a tough thing for him to deal with. You know, he you know, as we all know, he went into rehab. He's come out, he's not betted, he's not had a bet for over a year now. So, you know, that situation in itself away from the ring, you know, he's done so well doing that. You know, it's not easy to beat addictions. And, you know, I'm proud of the fact that he's carried himself through that and being able to train and try and focus on a fight at the same time while you're trying to beat your addiction. You know, like he come apart against the Spaniard, who's a great fighter anyway. He was a lot better than I think people thought he was going to be, and his record stands statement for that. And you know, he boxed well on the night, Garcia, and outboxed Ted. You know, but Ted weren't there. His mind weren't there. With the Conway fight, I thought he beat Conway clearly on that night. But listen, Conway put in a good performance. It was his first British title shot. You know, and he stayed in there and he made it hard for Ted. But you got to realise what Ted was going through at that time, trying to beat an addiction and trying to focus on the fight at the same time. It weren't an easy thing for him. And then, so he got a draw on that night. And then going into the Fitzgerald fight, I felt like his mind was a lot better coming into that fight. He was like, he still goes, you know, to his meetings every week. But I felt like he was outside the ring. He was juggling with his life a lot better, settled down. You know, weren't going into betting shops, obviously gambling, but he settled down better indoors. He had a little baby, and I felt with the Fitzgerald fight, I thought we boxed superb that night. You know, he come in as British champion, and I thought he boxed really well that night. I thought he outboxed Scott, and I didn't feel like Scott was in the greatest of shape either. And I felt like Ted actually beat Scott that night, and that should have been a win. So his last two fights, I think he should have had 2 wins next to him. But listen, life don't always go how you want it to go. You know, he never went his way last year. But what I said to him was, you gained a lot of experience from them fights last year, a lot of experience. So that'll make you into a better fighter, mentally strong as well. And I feel like he's come back in the gym as a different person for this fight. And, you know, like, I'm looking forward to the fight. It'd be great.
When you're dealing with a fighter like Ted, as you mentioned, he's only 24, but he does have a lot of experience for somebody at that stage of his career. But he's having these issues outside the ring. In your role as a trainer, I mean, boxer and trainer, arguably the closest relationship you can have in boxing, boxer trainer, boxer manager. What's it like for you to watch somebody that you train every day, that you take through, go through something like that?
Well, to be honest, I never knew. And obviously, if I'd have known, I would have sat down with him earlier, but I never knew until after the Garcia fight, when I realised he had no money left even to pay me. So that's the situation he was in, and if I'd have known, I would have obviously got on it earlier. But sometimes it only comes to light when everything goes wrong. and then you can only help people. Whoa, what the hell's that? Yeah, same colour as my shorts. Yeah, you can only help people when they actually need the help. So obviously at that time he was at breaking point and he needed the help, and you know, I was lucky enough or able enough to help him, and I feel like, you know, he's grown mentally and physically since them fights anyway last year. And as I say, he's got bags of experience now going into this fight, so he's just got to produce it on the night. He's got to produce that. I know what he's got inside him. He's got to produce it on the night against Sam.
Elsewhere on the fight camp lineup, you've got Felix Cash against Jason Welborn. I spoke to Felix and he said that he's excited for the opportunity to go in there against somebody like a Jason Welborn. Again, very experienced on the domestic scene, but has also boxed at world level against Jarrett Hurd. Is that how you see that fight?
Yeah, I mean, you know, he's been about for ages, hasn't he, Jason? I remember watching him. I was at the show. I must have had someone. I remember him boxing Matthew Macklin. That's how long ago. So he's fought at a good level, and you know, he's been British champion, as you say. He's fought for the world title, and I think this period of Felix's career, Jason Welborn's a perfect opponent. You know, he's experienced. He's always strong and fit. It comes to fight. So I think it's a good fight for Felix, and he's like headlining the show as well. So it's what I was saying to him before. You get plenty of viewers, and that's what he needs. He needs that. He needs everybody to see who he is and what he's about. I mean, he had a great fight last time out with Jack Cullen. It was a difficult fight because obviously Cullen's like massive, 6'4", long rangey fighter. Don't stop working. So I thought Felix boxed well that night and got him out of there in the 8th round, and you know, he stamped his authority on the middleweight domestic scene really. And you know, I want Felix to do box well on this night against Welborn on the 14th, and sort of say this is where I am. I'm ready to go now.
By his own admission, really, and something that me and him have spoken about in interviews that we've done previously, is that he's kind of, you know, he has gone under the radar in the middleweight division, but yeah, everybody I speak to who has sparred with him or have seen him close up in the gym always raves about his ability. Topping the bill on fight camp when there's not really that much else going on in the sporting schedule, just the perfect opportunity that he needs to really break out.
That's right, it's a perfect opportunity for him. That's what I said to him, you know, to top the bill. You know, loads of viewers will be watching him, you know, and he has, like you say there, he's got so much ability. I think he's had a little bit of unluckiness in, like, he was supposed to fight on March the 28th, so we was about 10 days out from the fight when we went into lockdown there. Before the Callum fight, he got injured, he got cut and was out of a fight there. So he's had a couple of hard camps where he's got to touching distance and ain't actually fought. So that must be frustrating for him in itself. But obviously, you know, Eddie knows his ability as well, and obviously wants to see him do the business and then push him on, you know. And you know, as I was saying, then he's in touching distance of big fights, British title, European title. He's right on top of them. You know, put a good performance in against Jason Welborn, and then you know, everyone will know who he is.
Also see John Daugherty return to the ring that night. No opponent yet, is that right for John?
I think Matchroom are working on a decent opponent for John. I don't think, yeah, I think all the fights that they're trying to put together on this fight camp are going to be 50-50 fights, like decent fights. So I think they're looking for a decent opponent for John, but they'll find one and announce it, you know. But yeah, John's raring to go. He's always raring to go. You can give him like 3 days notice and he'll be raring to go. So yeah, I like John. He's a good prospect. He's dedicated. He's obviously made a big move from where he's come from in Aberdeen or Montrose down to Essex, and you know, I'm looking forward to John's career. He's just a young kid, 21 years old, and he's got a lot of ability. Brilliant amateur, got a lot of boxing ability, and he can punch as well. He's a good body puncher. So I'm looking forward to John's career.
I think that's it for you, isn't it, with regards to the fighters that you've got on fight camp? I beg your pardon, I don't have my phone out at the minute. Is that it for you?
Yeah,
for your
no,
show?
that's it. I've got the 3 fighters on, yeah.
With the rest of your stable, obviously we were kind of waiting for the announcement. You've got, I mean, a host of British names in here. What was the reason for no Conor Benn, for no John Ryder, for no Ricky Burns, etc.?
Conor Benn is mandatory for the British, and I believe that Matchroom tried to do the fight with Chris Jenkins, but for some reason it couldn't get made. I don't know why, but that looked like that was going to go on one of the shows on Fight Camp, but it never got. The fight couldn't get made, not from our end. We was willing to go, but for whatever reason it never got made. So that will come around again. So Conor's still in training, ticking over. Also John Ryder, he's just waiting for obviously a big fight. The fight that he really wants is a Callum Smith return. Most people thought he won that night, and I think he deserves a return fight, because I think it'd be hard for Callum to walk around thinking in the back of his mind that he never probably beat John that night, especially in his hometown as well. I think he knows deep that he knows he got beat that night, and I think John deserves a return with Callum, and whether they'll have the return or not, I don't know. But that's what John's looking at. And if not Callum Smith, he'll be looking for a big fight, maybe in the States. Eddie was talking about, so because they know him over there now. You know what I mean? He was on that big bill, Golden Boy bill, so they like him over there. So he might fight out there. And then Martin Ward, he was supposed to be fighting. Eddie nearly had in touching distance of fighting for the WBA regular title, super featherweight. Obviously, he was looking at doing that around this time, but that's obviously all gone out the window. So he's just got to sit around and wait. Joe Caldina's got a bit of an hand injury at the moment, so he's looking to get that sorted out. Who's the other one? That's it, isn't it?
Ricky Burns.
Oh, Ricky Burns, yeah. Ricky's got nothing nothing happening at the minute, so I don't know what's going on there. So yeah, that's about it really.
You mentioned, go back to what you were saying about John Ryder and the fact that a lot of people are calling for that rematch. We caught up with Joe Gallagher a couple of weeks ago, and he obviously, with the British Boxing Board of Control guidelines and the way that things are at the minute with COVID, you're limited in the opponents that you can get. Now he spoke about Billy Joe Saunders, obviously a unification fight. And he also spoke about Zach Parker, but he didn't mention John Ryder. Yeah. Now, why do you think that is?
Why do you think it is? Why would you mention Zach Parker and not John Ryder? Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. It's not up to me. It's up to them if they want to do the return fight. But they know that we want to do it. So if they don't want to do it, I can't force them to do it because John was mandatory. They've boxed their mandatory. But all I'm saying is, I think they know in the back of their minds that they never won that night. And John feels like he won the fight and he should get the return. But whether it'll happen or not, who knows? But if they don't want to fight John, then John will have to go, down a different channel really. But I can understand if Callum Smith wants to fight Billy Joe Saunders and they want to unify all the titles, I can sort of understand that. But why would you want to fight Zach Parker instead of John Ryder? It don't make any sense at all, do you know what I mean? To me, that's just like not wanting to fight.
You mentioned kind of the other options for John Ryder and potentially going stateside. Obviously had that very impressive knockout win over Bilal Akawi. I know that the fight that had been mentioned in the past was potentially David Lemieux around John's weight. Is that the kind of route that you're looking to go to? Obviously, I don't really know what's going on with Lemieux at the minute, but
yeah, as you know, he was supposed to fight David Lemieux on that card, and then David Lemieux broke his hand, so he was out of action. There was talk of that fight happening again at some stage of this year, maybe later on in the year. There was talk about John fighting Rosario as well.
Would that be so? Would he go down to 154 for that?
No, it'd be a super middle because Rosario now is about to be fighting Danny Jacobs.
Talking about Jason Rosario, the 154 pounder. Sorry.
Rosado. Yeah, now he's talking about fighting Danny Jacobs, but before the lockdown, Eddie was putting his name to me, so it was looking like we might get one of them if the Callum Smith fight don't happen. So it'll be someone around that sort of level to get back in with. and then we'll have to go from there, see what happens. But I think if Callum Smith and Billy Joe Saunders don't get together, then John Ryder's obviously the next man, you know, to fight. Because if you look at the independent rankings, it's like the 4 world champions and then John Ryder. You know what I mean? So, you know, if you're looking at fighting the top fighters in the division, them 5 are the top fighters.
Which one of those fights do you think is the easier fight for John? Obviously, he shared the ring with both Billy Joe and Callum Smith in the past. Which one do you think is the easier fight for him?
Well, neither are easy. They're both world champions. They're both great fighters, you know, and neither one are easy. You know, either one's going to be an hard fight, but then John ain't easy for them. You know, I've always tried to chase the Billy Joe fight since John boxed him, because that was a very close fight. There was nothing in that. But listen, all 3 of them know that whoever fights whoever out of that little triangle is all going to be an hard fight. If Billy Joe fights Callum Smith, that's going to be an hard fight for both of them. Whoever fights John Ryder out of them 2 is going to be an hard fight. So they're difficult fights, but that's why they're up world level fights, and people want to watch them fights. You know, especially over here and the situation we're in at the minute. If you're going to watch a domestic fight, you want to watch the top fighters fight each other, and them 3 are the top fighters in the super middleweight division in the world, not just Britain.
Who would you give the edge to if Callum Smith was to box Billy Joe Saunders? Obviously, there's quite a significant size disparity between the 2. Do you think that would be the main point of that fight?
It's dependent really on that. You know, first the preparation for both of them, how they both prepare for the fight. You know, weight wise, I'm not sure Callum Smith can make 168 comfortably, so it's dependent. I think he's a 175 fighter, I do, but it depends how he makes weight and comes into the ring on a night. With Billy Joe, obviously the same thing. It depends how he, you know, how tactically he brings. Like if he's on the ball on his night, Billy Joe, he's an unbelievable fighter, like we see against David Lemieux. You can't touch him. But then in his last fight, you see the condition he come into the ring in his last fight. So it depends how he comes into the ring. So I think it's one of them fights where either one could win, just depending on how their camp's gone and how they come in on the night of the fight. But like everyone will want to watch that fight. It's a great fight. I'd love to watch that fight as a fan.
Picking it straight up there, the last show of Fight Camp sees Dillion Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin. Bit of a I mean, 2020's been very, very strange anyway, but having a pay-per-view fight in Eddie's Garden, I think is probably about in keeping with the way the rest of the year's gone. Who do you favour in that fight?
We were talking about it earlier. It's a really good fight because I've been watching Dillion on his Instagram page, and I'm thinking he's been flat out for weeks on end over in Portugal. And I've been thinking, why is he training like a madman? Do you know what I mean? Not thinking the Matchroom would do a pay-per-view. I was just thinking, because obviously knew Matchroom was going to do Fight Camp. I thought it was just going to be, you know, the sort of fighters like in Ted and Felix's sort of bracket, like British domestic fighters. I didn't know he was going to do a world level fight. But now I realise why Dillion's been training like that. But it's a brilliant fight. It's a sort of fight that would probably sell out the O2 as well, because we know all about Povetkin. He's a great fighter. I'm going to go for Dillion to win the fight. Just think he's obviously fresher and younger and got a little bit more about him. And I think he's improved in his last few fights. He's improved tremendously. And but it's going to be another great fight to watch, and one that as a fan I want to watch as well.
A lot of people are billing that or seeing it as kind of the battle of the left hooks. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, I think it'd be technically an hard fight for both of them. They're both tough. They're both top world level contenders, and you know, I just think where Dillion's a little bit more fresher than Povetkin, and then obviously at home in Eddie's back garden, I think I'll favour him to come through in a good fight though.
And before I let you go, as I do every time I come in here, I was taking a look at all of the photos on your wall. 2 heavyweights that you were photographed with at various different stages of theirs and your careers. Anthony Joshua and a certain Tyson Fury. Obviously you worked with AJ when he turned over as a professional. How do you see that fight potentially going? Obviously we've heard recently that a deal, in principle at least, has been done, looking at 2 fights potentially next year. What do you make of that?
Well, obviously they've both got to come through their mandatories first, which are both hard fights for both of them. Like everyone else, they'll be looking forward to watching both. If they fight twice next year, we're looking forward to watching both them fights. Technically, Joshua is a lot better than Wilder anyway, and he punches hard. Technically, Fury's a lot better than anybody at that weight. So I think it's going to be a really hard fight. Both fights are going to be difficult fights. There'll be a lot of pressure on both of them, obviously, because it's an all-British affair. Who wins? You don't know. It's a toss-up who's going to win that fight. But I'm looking forward to it, though.
A lot of people always talk about Tyson Fury and how he's developed throughout his career. I interviewed Barry Jones, obviously he works for Sky, BT, etc., from World Champion, and he said that Tyson Fury's been the biggest surprise of his kind of career in boxing, as it were. He, having watched him have the 2 fights with John McDermott all of those years ago, to now see him having the 2 fights with Deontay Wilder, he couldn't believe it was the same man. Obviously you were involved and worked with Tyson a number of years ago. Could you tell then that there was something special about him, or are you as surprised as Barry?
I think he was very young, weren't he, then, when he turned pro, and he was a young heavyweight, and his man strength sort of never come through till later on in life, and but he certainly had the ability. You could watch that he had the ability to become a top fighter, and also the grit as well, because in that fight you're talking about, where I worked his corner against McDermott, the first fight, a lot of people thought, you know, he was lucky to get the decision, but at that time on the night, I thought he just nicked it on the night, but it was an hard fight. But what I noticed was he wasn't in the greatest condition for that fight, and he still got up off his stool in the last round and just give it absolutely, like, bit down on his gum shield and just give it absolutely everything. So you could see that he not only had the ability as a young kid, but also the heart, you know, and that's one thing we've all realised that he's got. You know, the 2 knockdowns against Wilder, you know, he shows how big his heart is. You know, he got up and then knockdowns when a lot of people wouldn't, you know, and then obviously in the next fight is history when he went on to stop him. So, you know, he's got a massive heart, he's got a clever brain, and he's a mature man now, so, you know, he's a big man, and you know, Joshua's the same. He's got a lot of heart, Joshua, as well. Just getting knocked out and then going back in with the same opponent in your next fight takes a lot of mental strength as well to do that, and then go in there and outbox him. So both of them boys, he's a great fight of the century so far, obviously. And, you know, it's like an Ali Foreman fight, really. And because they're the 2 best in the world, luckily enough they're both British, and so that gives us as Brits more to love about the fight being made.
Okay, well, before I let you go, another heavyweight who has hit the news in the last couple of days, Tyrell Miller, has been in the headlines again for the wrong reasons, shall we say. Failed another drugs test, another RYDER test. Just your thoughts on that? Just
crazy, absolute crazy. I mean, he's failed a drug test, which is crazy in the first place, but to fail another one, it's just terrible, really. It's terrible for him, and it's bad. It looks bad on the sport as well, because you know, I think really they should have cancelled. You know, they should have made his suspension a lot longer than he got the first time. They let him off lightly, and then he's done it again. It's ridiculous. But listen, you know, I think he's ruined his career, the kid. You know, he had a lot in front of him to fight for, and he's just ruined his own life and his own career.
You mentioned kind of having sterner, stricter punishments. Boxing, in my opinion at least, and certainly from covering the sport for the last however many years, seems to have a problem with performance enhancing drugs. No matter where you look and what division, somebody somewhere along the line in the top 10, top 15 in the world has failed a drugs test somewhere along the line. Is it stricter punishments, sterner punishments that we need, or do we need to look at this from a different point of view as boxing in general?
Yeah, it's a good question, that whether they should have served longer suspensions, or, you know, should we be like, I think the UK anti-doping run a very strict regime. They, you know, they come on us at all variant times to test variant of my boxers down here. They'll just turn up different times, 6, 7 in the morning, so you never know when they're coming, and they'll sit here all day until the actual person who's testing walks through the door. So you can't get any better than what they're doing, really. But listen, taking steroids and then going into the ring to hit another person is a dangerous thing, because you're cheating, you know. And if we go and look at dressing rooms, people wrapping hands up. The reason we do that is because we don't want the other person cheating. And yet, on the other flip side of it, some fighters are cheating by taking steroids, and they shouldn't be allowed to box. And you know, and if they get caught taking steroids, then obviously the suspension should be longer. And if they get caught again, and that's it for them. You know, Joe Miller, that's it for him now. So you know. Because it's a dangerous thing what he's doing there to the opponents.
I think in Germany they have it as if you fail a test for performance enhancing drugs, it's illegal and you get taken to prison. I think it's for attempted murder or something like that.
Oh really? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about that, but you know.
Your old mate Felix Sturm has an outstanding case in Germany.
I think he's tax evasion though, isn't it?
No, there's a performance enhancing drugs case.
Oh, I think he's been in prison for tax evasion though, hasn't he? For not paying his tax. I wonder why he flew down over there in a private jet. Down to the tax man.
Tony SIMS, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for speaking to Boxing Social. Always a pleasure to catch up with you. Look forward to seeing you soon at Fight Camp, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, definitely.